Here we go. Hi, guys. Welcome to Traveling Bible Study and Tandem Bible Study for our YouTube folks. It is June 10th, 2026, and today is our class number 8 in our Unfulfilled Bible Prophecies series. And today we're going to cover Jesus' words on the end times and the last days. So let's start with a word of prayer, and then we'll jump right in. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful for the information that you have for us. Lord, speak to each one of our hearts. Help us to learn more, understand more about the things you want us to know. And help us, Lord, to then use that in our daily walk. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Okay. So where we're going to dive into today is really three different topics surrounding prophecy that really revolve around Jesus' words that were recorded in Matthew 24, Luke 21, and then we're going to touch on Daniel 12. You know, over the many years, I've heard many pastors and folks speak on Matthew 24, which many of us have heard called the Olivet Discourse. And over the years, I've listened to so many different sermons and read so many different articles on this. I actually think it's one of the more misunderstood things that Jesus has portrayed. I think people have taken it for their own purposes and sort of modeled it the way they wanted to make their point. And I think the funny thing about it is Jesus said that would happen. The thing that I guess I want you to be cognitive of is everything that we read in the Bible, all on its own, is of course insightful and of course provides a platform for some understanding on different topics. But you can't take it in a vacuum in many regards. What do I mean by that? Well, the Bible is a totality of information, a totality of explaining itself. And I'm going to give you an example of this. Poor Daniel. Oh, Daniel and Ezekiel. I just think of those two prophets a lot and think of, wow, those poor guys. But let's take Daniel. Daniel, younger man, you know, when he was captured, gone to Babylon, wrote the book of Daniel, right, over many years. And when he would write different components of it, it was as things chronology, went for him. And he wrote chapter 12 of Daniel, and it has a lot to do with things still yet to come. It talks about what we now know to be the tribulation, and what was provided to Daniel from God was very exacting. This is going to be 1,290 days, and it wasn't like, well, it's going to be about 1,200. God gave him some very specific dates as far as time continuums. But poor Daniel was provided with so much information that he was just like, oh. In fact, he was quite overwhelmed at times by what was provided to him. And there were a couple of things that happened there where he was about ready to write what was provided to him, and either the angel or Christ or God, whoever was communicating with him at the time, said, don't write that down, that's for later. So you have to understand, 2,500 years ago, here's Daniel writing about stuff that to this day in 2026 still hasn't happened. My point is this. Then comes along Ezekiel, then comes along Matthew, then Luke, for these accounts with Jesus's words, and then we have the Apostle Paul, and he adds some pieces that are revealed to him, and then the ultimate revelation is what Jesus Christ himself, along with two angel witnesses, provided to the Apostle John in the last book of the Bible, the revelation of Jesus Christ. My point is this: the Bible interprets the Bible. And to my dear friends and my dear associates and dear Christians, God is pretty clear that we're not to add to or delete from his word. I think that's pretty important. I try desperately not to do that. So there are things that we know because pieces are tied together. And there's things that we have knowledge of, but we don't know the when, right? That's kind of the whole idea of this conversation of, that's why I did some of the things I did with the independent, meaning we know it's going to happen, hasn't happened yet, but when and where it falls, nobody knows but God, right? People speculate, and that's okay, as long as they clearly articulate, I'm just speculating, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through really what Jesus is talking about. And as we kind of step through this, I want you to try to keep in your mind where Jesus is in Matthew 24 in the continuum of what we know. Okay? So let's just take a second. So we have Daniel 12, which is very exacting and provides wonderful, detailed information. But the context was kind of weird because at the time, 2,500 years ago, didn't really totally make sense. Then we have Ezekiel, who's provided some things. Zechariah has provided. There's been contributions all around the Bible to this culmination of different events. And remember, it's not really any one event. One could say, well, Tony, there's a couple huge events. Number one was the arrival, right, of Jesus Christ. Well, gosh, yeah, but what about the death and resurrection? That was kind of a big deal, yeah. Well, what about the ascension? Yeah, that was a big deal. Yes, 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 but what's the next big event, if you will? The second coming of Jesus Christ. Well, Tony, but what about the rapture? Yes, big event, no question. What about the Holy Spirit stepping aside? Oh, yes, big event. Well, what about the tribulation, the 7-year peace? Yeah, yes, all of these are important. I'm not trying to diminish them, and we're going to cover them in this class. But and they're all huge because they impact us, and we're going to see it, and it's going to impact our loved ones. But you got to kind of understand what are maybe the bigger deals to God, right? And I know that's hard for us because we're not God. We're not godly. We don't have that level of intelligence. We don't have that level of understanding. But I want you to kind of try to grasp, if you will, the narrative that Jesus was providing and where he was at that time. So let me paint the picture. So Jesus is there in Jerusalem for the festival, and he's had some rough days in the temple because of the religious leaders and the den of thieves, and he's not a happy camper. And he's seen what's happened to his father's house, because remember, the whole idea of the temple for God is that's where he's going to reside, and so he can commune with his people, right? His people that believe in the God of Israel. So when things aren't going well there, or things are corrupt there, it's not a good day, right? It's not a good issue. So Jesus has sort of dusted off his feet, if you will, said, I'm done with this stuff. He knows his time is very short. I mean, it's not like he doesn't know what's coming. He knows exactly what's coming and when and where. So he goes to the Mount Olives and is there with headed there with his disciples. And the disciples, they see that he's, a little upset and, things aren't, and they're trying to, hey, look at the temple and isn't it cool and isn't it, wow, it's so ornate. And Jesus is like, guys, it's not about the building, right? It's not about things. It's not about the gold. It's about, this is where my Father sits so he can have relationship with you. And this is what it's turned into. And these religious vipers, and so Jesus is in a frustrated place. He knows clearly why he was sent. He knows why he's there. He knows what's about to happen, and he's just hours away from being arrested. That's going to ultimately lead to his crucifixion, right? The bearing of our sins, and then, of course, 3 days later, his resurrection. So he's kind of in this spot, right? He's in this mental place. And what ends up happening is the disciples keep going on about the temple. And he's like, look, you guys, this is nothing. In fact, this whole temple is going to be destroyed, and not one stone will be left on another. Now you have to understand, these are huge, monstrous stones. They're like 16 feet square kind of thing. They're huge. Curiously, as he's saying this to disciples, he's trying to explain what's coming, and it eventually did happen in 70 AD. But it was also that same statement that the religious leaders of the time used to accuse him of blasphemy by threatening to destroy the temple. He wasn't threatening to destroy the temple. He could have destroyed the temple with a blink of an eye. But what he was telling his disciples was, stop going on about the building. It's a den of thieves. It's not where my Father's sitting. And this whole thing's going to be destroyed. In fact, it's going to be so destroyed, not one stone will be on the other. So once again, you can see how fake news, takes over and pins on him this issue of, you say you're going to destroy the temple. That's not what he said. So then our dear disciples, who again, you have to understand, in a snapshot of time, were there. They didn't totally understand, at least all of them didn't totally understand what was happening. They certainly knew the threat of an arrest and those things. But did it really calculate? Did it really come into their calculation that he was going to be sacrificed? Well, no. I mean, Jesus had given them some indication, but again, you could tell by sort of the post-arrest, post-accusation of Jesus, they were very much human, right? So, but they know, and he said, I'm going to go away, I'm going to go do these things, but I'll come back, So they knew some of this, and they wanted to understand how does this end? So what they did was they asked him a series of 3 questions. My mind, 3 questions. Some people say 2 questions, some people say 1 question, some people say 3. You pick, right? Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be? What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? They thought, probably, I'm guessing, speculation, that they were asking 1 question, because they thought it'd be all wrapped up in 1. But the truth is we now know from later writings in the Bible, it's kind of 3 questions. Okay? So, how do we know that? Well, we have the Apostle Paul, who wrote several important things inspired by God and provided to him by Christ, um, that tell us more about what's going to happen. And then we have, of course, the revelation of Jesus Christ, written by John many years later, as the last book of the Bible, really helping us understand the details of what was started or signaled originally by Daniel, Zechariah, Ezekiel, talked about by Jesus. So, what I did was I provided you guys, of course, Matthew 24 is right here. I also provided you with a handout, and it's study guide for Matthew 24. I've looked over many study guides, and most of them have a very distinct bent, and I was trying to avoid that. Others had well, it could be this, it could be that, it could be the stars, the moon, the pickle. I mean, they were all over the place, and I was like, I don't want to do that. So this one, I generally think is a good summation. It's fairly objective, I think, in my opinion. It doesn't go too hard down any one particular path, but just sort of outlines some things so that you can have some insight into what Jesus was saying. But if you just take what Jesus says and sort of try to paste it into what you believe or what somebody's told you or whatever, you can do that, but it's not really what I think God intended. By the same token, Jesus is trying to answer a very difficult question to the disciples, and they can't even really comprehend what's going on yet, I mean, which was obvious, let alone if he starts talking about, okay, then there's going to be this guy called the Antichrist, and then there's going to be this 7-year tribulation. Can you imagine? Their heads would, right? So he's providing some perspective, he's providing some advanced signaling, he's referring to Daniel specifically on some issues. But what he's talking about and what he's articulating, right, is frankly an answer to what is coming, but they're thinking like short time. And we know already he's nearly 2,000 years, right? Nearly 2,000 years into this answer. Because it was, 32, 33 AD at the time that he answered the question, and we're already at 2026 AD. So what was he talking about? So what we're going to do, we're going to kind of step through some things, but I want you to know that there's this continuum of ideas and thoughts that are then explained or outlined better or more completely in other parts of the Bible. So again, the Bible interprets the Bible. I hope I'm making sense. Okay. So let's walk through a few components. And I'm not going to read everything. I just want to hit some of the high points and explain some things. So again, Jesus went and departed out of the temple. Like I said, he dusted off his feet. He wasn't going to contend with those rebel rousers. The second temple, which was destroyed in 70 AD and Jesus walked through, was huge, monstrously huge, right? It was 500 yards, long and 400 yards wide. It was very, very large. It took more than 80 years to construct, and when it was finally completed in 63 AD, we know 7 years after that, it was completely destroyed by the Romans. So Jesus' sort of first indication that, look, stop going on about the building because this thing's going to be destroyed. And the curious thing is they could have destroyed a lot of it without knocking the stones off of each other. And in fact, when they built the second temple, they had the foundation from the first temple to know exactly where it is. Curiously, now, one of the debates in Israel, frankly, is where's the original foundation? Where exactly, And everybody thinks they know. Somebody's right and a whole bunch of people are wrong, right? But my point is Jesus was very specific about one stone would be taken off another, but there was really no motivation for that, except until a drunk Roman soldier decided to set the place on fire, and it melted all the ornate gold that was inside the temple, and it dripped down the marble stones of the walls, and then would slide in between them and pool there and cool, and that's where the gold would collect. So, because the Romans wanted to collect the gold, they had to remove stone after stone so they could get at the gold that had melted and seeped in. Very interesting application by God the Father and Christ the Son to effectuate removing one stone over another, right? In fact, if you've ever had a chance to go to Israel, there's quite a few areas where you can see some of the stones that have been, shoved off the Temple Mount. It's a fascinating thing to see. Okay, so now there's the triple question. Tell us when these things will be, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age. So again, 3 questions in one. They thought they were probably asking one question, but I think they didn't realize. So Jesus provides the answer here, but probably in their mindset, it was interpreted or taken by them in a way different than what we take it today, because they didn't have the benefit of Paul's writings. They didn't have the benefit of Jesus' later comments after he was resurrected. They didn't have the benefit of John's, the revelation of Jesus Christ that Christ gave John to write many years later, right? And so you can imagine here's this first century Galilean fisherman, whatever, and he's hearing all these things and he's just like, right, I don't get it. And so it's created a lot of churn, and even today there are people that apply different statements that were made by Jesus in a manner that sort of suit their narrative. I'll put it to you that way. But there's a few key principles that Jesus talked about that I want to cover. I think that part of the exact description that Jesus gives, but absent of a timeline, a specific timeline, because it's so fascinating. Jesus go, well, there's going to be this and this and this, but that doesn't mean it's the end. So wait a minute. So what's he answering? Go back to the original question, right? What would be the signs, right? Tell us what will be the signs of your coming and the end of the age. So he's like, well, they're going to be these signs. Oh, but don't worry, that's not the end. and so you can imagine they're just probably swimming, as I think we are today, except for we have some benefit, of course, of later writings in the Bible that provide us some clarity. So God and Christ have been clear that they want every age, whether they were a first century Galilean fisherman or a dumb old man in 2026, they wanted us to have a clear picture of what would be the signs, what would be the things. However, there are a few key caveats. Jesus has always said, but look up, don't let these things worry you. He says it here again. I want you to know it can happen at any time. It can happen at any time. Now, the weird part about that is he refers to Daniel, right, in his description of some things, and he clarifies and reminds everybody, like the prophet Daniel said. But Daniel gave some pretty specific timelines, so that when this happens, then this many days. And so how can it be unknown the date? Well, again, Jesus is sharing this sort of continuum of things that are to happen, right? And one of those that are in that is the rapture. Because the truth is we know from the Bible, way back to Daniel, we know some pretty definite timelines when triggers take place, right? When the Antichrist signs a peace treaty with Israel and many other nations, we know a 7-year clock starts, period. It's no mystery. We know halfway through, right, 1260, we know halfway through he's going to, and Jesus talks about it in this Matthew 24, he's going to stop, the temple will have been built, he will stop the daily sacrifice, he will announce himself God, put up some sort of an image of himself, which is described by Daniel and in Revelation as the abomination of desolation, meaning to make desolate, to pollute, if you will, the temple, right? When that happens, and we'll see it again here in Matthew 24, he refers you right back to Daniel, which says 1290 days. Second coming, 1290 days. Such a watch. Right? And also said what's going to sort of, in broad terms, what's going to happen during that 1290 days. And he calls it the Great Tribulation, which, by the way, ta-da, we know that from Revelation as well. Well, what about the first part of Revelation? What about the first 3.5 years? Well, Daniel doesn't really talk about that, right? And Jesus doesn't really explain all that here, now, because he wanted that revealed later. God's sense of timing, God's sense of purpose, but again, to create a sense of imminency and alertness on our part, okay? So God has his reasons and his ways for really revealing things as he does. So one of the first warnings that Christ gives us, this early members of the church, and have said it to us repeatedly, take heed that no one deceives you. Take heed that no one deceives you. Well, what could that be? Who could that be? Well, he says, many will come in my name. Many will come, right? There's a story in this summary about that group in 1844 that got everybody all ginned up that, no, this is it. This is when it's happening. This is what's going to take place. Jesus is going to return. And he didn't return. So what did that do? Well, it took a whole lot of people that had gotten excited and overly ginned up about it, and they decided, forget this. A great falling away. Every time some knothead comes out, oh, the Bible's secret code revealed. You can go on YouTube, and there's all kinds of knotheads that are, oh, the Bible has revealed something that never known, right? There's a few pastors that just, I won't say their names, it doesn't matter. I don't want to give them any billing, but they come out with, oh, now here's the blood moon predictions, and here's the Berbeder, and here's the Berbeder, and now there's an avatar thing, and oh, yeah, okay. And have you been right once? Just once. So, there are plenty of folks out there to deceive you. Plenty. Yeah. So many. So many religions out there. So many spin-offs. So many things that have been pulled away. So many things where So people of faith over the years, oh no, it's okay if we have gay pastors, and it's okay if we have this, and it's okay if we do that, and so many things deceiving, right? I believe one of the greatest deceptions is the Catholic Church and the Mormons. Sorry, I'm just being honest. Um, they have, Satan has done a masterful job of deluding Jesus Christ with those two groups. You hear the Pope go on and on about Mother Mary and how she's a co-redemptress with Christ. In what book? Where in the Bible is that? I missed it. No offense to Mother Mary. Probably a wonderful woman, obviously selected by God, but I'm not seeing about her being a redemption. She's not the redemptor. So, just crazy stuff. Crazy, crazy deception. And it's going to continue. It's going to continue, right? And it's going to continue to lead people astray. Jesus talked about, you're going to see things and I don't want you to be troubled. They're going to come to pass. There's going to be a series of things, but it's not yet the end, right? So again, he's answering both of those questions about what are the signs, but he's giving signs, and then they go, what's the end? Well, okay, you're going to see these things, and this is going to happen, but it's not yet the end, okay? So he calls it the beginning of sorrows, right? Though none of those events are the specific sign of the end, collectively, they actually are a sign. He said it would be like birth pangs, right? Growing with frequency and intensity. What are they? Wars, famines, earthquakes. Okay, so let's take a second. Let's wars. So we seem to have plenty of those, despite what President Trump's done or said or thought he did. I mean, he might have ended some things, but they're probably just a band-aid, right? And it kind of depends on how you define wars, right? Especially nowadays, it's not like they are overly apparent. But even like right now, you've got people of Turkey, the leadership of Turkey attacking the Kurds in Iraq, which has gone on for many, many years. Okay, is that a war? Well, I think it's a war. People are dying, they're battling. We don't hear about Ukraine so much and Russia, even though that's still ongoing. People dying by the truckloads. So, are there wars? Yeah, wars and rumors of wars. Okay, earthquakes. Well, interesting for those of you that are interested. Earthquakes. So, if I were to ask you in the last week, just 1 week, 7 days, let's say earthquakes that are 5.0 or greater, which 5.0 is when you start getting damage, right? So 5.0, how many earthquakes in the last 7 days have taken place that were 5.0 or greater? 61. About 9? 9 a day? Is that about 9? Yeah, it's about 9. 9 earthquakes in the world over 5.0 a day. And they'll die down and then they'll ramp up. And they'll die down and then ramp up, just like birth pains. So let's talk about famines. Do we have famines going on worldwide? Of course. Has anyone been reading the news lately about because of the Iran issue, the drop in water so because of the Iran issue, we're not getting fertilizer, or it's super expensive, so farmers aren't buying fertilizer. The aquifers in the United States are way down. Many, many states are experiencing drought. Then you pile up that they're talking about in anywhere between June and September will be the start of the new super El Nino. Warmer weathers, less moisture, big global weather issues. Will that bring famine? Yeah. Look at the economies of the world. Look around the world, famine is an issue. And it will come and go, but it is really just the start, right? Then Jesus gets a little bit more specific about some things that were troubling. He said, "Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all the nations for my name's sake." Okay, well, let's just take that for a second. Who's he talking to? He's talking to fellow Jews. So let's just understand that. Does that necessarily apply to us as Christians? Well, I suppose at some level, any follower of Jesus Christ is going to have peripheral problems. But let's just take, for example, the Jews. Where do the Jews stand today? I just read an article this morning that increasing number of people in the United States are against the Jewish state, against the Jews, right? Netanyahu said yesterday to his security cabinet, "I think there's going to be a time where we're going to have to do it all on our own, that we won't, and we'll have huge isolation from the world, and we won't have help from the United States." Netanyahu said that to his leadership group yesterday. Yes. So what is he saying? "And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many." I want you to think about COVID for a minute. What did COVID do? Now, we can get past for a minute whether the vaccine was good or bad and the health impacts and blah, blah, blah. But what did it do to families? Kids can't see grandma, grandpa. Kelly and I weren't allowed to go to a child's wedding because we refused to take the vaccine. We were not allowed to see a grandchild because we wouldn't take the vaccine. So my view of this is that we're seeing more and more this issue of people rising up against each other. I can't tell you how many people that Kelly and I know that are our age that are experiencing a situation where they can't see kids, they can't see grandkids because of blank, fill in the blank. You're too mean, you're too harsh, you're too bald, you're too religious, you didn't get, we have one of our children who said, "Well, you can't come see the baby unless you get a tetanus shot." Like, a tetanus shot? I didn't step on a rusty nail. I'm not going to bite the child. What the hell you mean I got to have a tetanus shot? Well, that's our rule. Got to have a tetanus shot. Okay. And what? I got to dye my hair purple? I mean, what's next? Where's this coming from? Where's this insanity coming from? Guess what? Jesus said it would happen. People will betray one another. People will hate one another. False prophets. Paula White. What's the knothead in Texas, Houston? I forget. Joel Osteen, right? Benny Hinn. Many false prophets, false religious leaders. The Pope. "And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold." Do we not see that currently? How many times do people not get involved? Someone's getting attacked on the subway. Someone jumps in and helps. Next thing you know, the person that helped is being prosecuted criminally. Does that motivate any of us to want to help? Nope. So I think you can absolutely get attacked on a subway or lots of different bus and no one would do anything. I tell Kelly when she goes and flies somewhere, I'm like, just put your head down. Don't even look up. Lawlessness abounds. The love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. Right? He also says, Jesus says, that the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nation, and then the end will come. All right? We know that he says they will deliver you to tribulation and kill you. Okay? Well, when is he talking about? What snapshot in time is he talking about? Well, I think that's happened in the past. There was a persecution of Christians all over the place in the first century. We know that it's happened now. There's some persecution, if you will, United States, Europe, but heavy persecution in other countries, China, Africa, where people are literally being killed because of their faith. Right? It's not a minor thing. It's thousands and tens of thousands of people. What else is he talking about? Well, the tribulation, we know from what we've read in Revelation, will be another time of persecution. The Antichrist, Satan, they are absolutely going to go after anyone who turns their life to Christ. Anyone who refuses the sign of the beast, right? Refuses the mark. They're not going to just go, well, that's too bad, you're just going to starve to death. No, the Bible says they get beheaded for their faith. Yes. It's a sad thing. So what Jesus is talking about is pretty wide ranging, from first century to what we're seeing now to the end. So what is the definition of the end? Well, let's just agree for discussion that the end is the second coming. Can we agree? Although we're going to study what happens after the second coming, because there are things that happen after the second coming that Revelation teaches us. But for this discussion, let's just say the end, right, is the second coming. Okay, great. We'll agree to that. So, can I tell you how far away the end is? I can kind of tell you the minimum. What do you mean by that? Well, we know from the Bible, right? Not me, from the Bible. We have to have a 7-year peace treaty, right? And we know from Daniel and Revelation what happens. And then Jesus comes at the end of that, 7 years. So how far away is the end? Do I know exactly? No, heck no, not even close. Can I swear to you that it's at least 7 years from now? Yep, I can do that. How can you do that? Because the Bible tells me. The Bible tells me there's going to be a 7-year tribulation period. Ta-da! And then the second coming, the end. Remember our definition of the end. Well, what about more than that? No, I'm not going to venture beyond that. Get serious. Well, why not? You've just said it's at least 7 years, because the Bible tells me it's 7 years. Well, is it 10? Is it 15? Is it... I don't know. Well, when's the rapture? Oh, we've already talked about that. In fact, Jesus goes on to tell us, while he's talking about the exactness of Daniel's timelines, he also says, and nobody knows the day and hour of the return. And they're all like, what? I'm confused. What return is he talking about? Are there multiple returns? Sort of. Jesus comes to earth, the first coming and the second coming. He comes into the clouds for the rapture. Doesn't come to earth. Doesn't put his feet on the earth for the rapture. He calls us to him. So as he goes on, he says, as spoken by Daniel the prophet, the abomination of desolation. We've talked about what that is. We know from Daniel what it is. We know from Revelation what it is. We have a precise number of days from when that takes place. We know that it's all the image of the beast. We know this from Daniel and Revelation, right? So Jesus goes on. He says that when you see that abomination at the midpoint, per Daniel, flee. What, me? I need to pack? Where do I need to go? No. Is he talking to me? He's not talking to me. Oh, he's talking to you. No, he's not talking to you. Who's he talking to? Who is Jesus talking to? He says, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Who's he talking to? The Jews. The Jews. All Jews? New York Jews? That's not what I read. I think the New York Jews are going to get persecuted out of New York. That's what I generally think is going to happen. I think they're going to continue to travel to Israel. And God is going to protect Israel, just like we studied last week with the Ezekiel 38-39 war, which is getting close, right? But when those are in Judea, he's talking to the Jewish folks. I want you to flee. He wants them to flee. They flee to an area near Petra in Jordan, where God supernaturally protects them. He talks about fleeing because what is going to come is a great destruction. Is he talking to the church? Is he talking to believers? Does he say, and to the saints, flee? No. Why? Because church is gone. What Jesus is talking about is he's still answering the same question. How are the signs and what's it going to look like in the end? He's telling you there's going to be a point near the end that we're going to hit the spot. It's 1,290 days per Daniel, right? And when that button's pushed and you see the abomination of desolation, you know there's 1,290 days. But I'm telling you, come off of the roof, get off the ladder, don't go back in and get your coat, leave, flee, because the Antichrist is going to take over Israel. They're going to kill 2/3 of the Jewish people. 2/3. How do you know that? The Bible tells us. Revelation tells us. So Jesus is urgently speaking to, right? But he says, look, when people are like, Christ is here, Christ is there, no. Don't follow all that stuff. He says, when I come in the second coming, it will be like lightning traveling from the east to the west, right? It will also be with the coming of the Son of Man. It's not going to be a shock. Everyone's going to see it. When he comes at his second coming. But so people are going to see it when he comes to the rapture? Nope. In the blink of an eye, the twinkling of an eye, we will be gone. The world will be in shock, more than shock. It will be earth-changing. Holy Spirit steps aside. Remember, was it this class? Sorry, it might have been another class. I talked about the impact of the Holy Spirit. When the Holy Spirit stands away, the Holy Spirit is the absolute arbiter and controller and regulator of evil in the world. And when he steps aside at the rapture, bad things will happen. Bad things. Really evil things. And that evil will just permeate through the society and just be terrible. And no wonder hearts will go cold. there will be little hope, if any hope at all. It will be visible when Jesus comes in the second coming. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven. What is he saying here? What's he talking about? Guess what? Go to Revelation. What do we know about the Great Tribulation? The bowl judgments. And we know that the sun is darkened, the moon is darkened, stars are falling from the sky, just as was revealed to the Apostle John for Revelation. Jesus is talking about it in 33 AD, right? He is telling you exactly what we what we later learn and confirm, if you will, in more detail in Revelation. Can you imagine being the apostles at this point just going, what? The sun will darken and the moon will darken and stars will fall from the sky. Here's a first century person. Can you imagine? They're probably freaking out. I would, if I was hearing this from Jesus, I'd be freaking out just all on my own. But being in a first century guy, phew. One of the more confusing statements of Jesus that gets used by different people in different ways. And I will tell you, the smart money, the pastors that I have the greatest respect for personally don't really touch this. Or they'll say, here it is, and we don't exactly know what it means. But I will tell you, everybody wants to attach something to it. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. And it's preceded by the verse, now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branches has already become tender and put forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation shall not pass till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. Okay. A lot of people, the Bible often refers to the fig tree as Jerusalem, right? So that some review this as the rebirth of Jerusalem in 1948. Then they say this generation shall not pass, so they start doing the math. Well, what's a generation? Is it 70? Is it 80? Is it 100? Is it and they start doing the reverse math. I'm guilty. Tried doing it. I don't even fuss with it anymore. Why? Because Jesus, doggone it, he wasn't really clear about this. Well, no duh, Tony. No wonder he wasn't clear about it. You know why he wasn't clear about it? Because he wants us to always be ready. In fact, he goes on very quickly to talk about being ready. But of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. And it's my view and the view of many different pastors in eschatology that this but of that day conversation has to do with the rapture, for which we have no clue the day or the hour. And the reason that we're thinking that the belief is that that's what Jesus was talking about is because when you look at what Daniel said about the Great Tribulation and the desolation of the desolation of the temple, right, and 1290 days, it's like, well, we do know days. Now, we don't know it today, but we will know it 3.5 years ahead. That seems like a pretty big head start. So, Jesus is talking about all kinds of things, right? But it's generally believed that he is then talking about what is later explained by Paul in Thessalonians about the rapture, the snatching away. Okay? Then he goes, but as the days of Noah were, also will be the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, they were eating, drinking, right? Doing their thing. That, remember, in the days of Noah, the whole region was marked with violence and demonic actions and oppression and just over the top behavior, right? So it's not a shock that he's talking about those days being like the days of Noah. One could argue that we're in some of those days today with the behavior. But I will tell you, I believe what Jesus is referring to is really those days near the end, just at the second coming. Because as bad as a Christian, I look at things today and I'm just shaking my head going, what the heck, and what are people thinking, and why is that? And I'm just so distraught, frankly, about what I see as people's behavior in this demoralizing way that things are happening. But I will tell you, when the Christians are taken and the Holy Spirit steps inside, I think they will look back at these days going, oh, those days were great, because it's going to be an absolute crap show. I think evil will run unabated. Things that now are just an argument or somebody being loud at a store about something or on an airplane will turn into a huge melee, gunplay, whatever. I'm just absolutely convinced of it. I was at a public event, a big box store recently. Ran into a friend of mine who's significantly younger than me. He's in his 30s. And I say, hey, what's going on? We're talking. He goes, oh my gosh. He goes, I was just over at customer service and there was this old guy. I'm like, hey, careful. He goes, older than you. I'm like, really? Older than me? Holy cow. He says, yeah. He was over there just going off, screaming at customer service, and I was standing behind him. I just said, hey, stop being an asshole, right? And I guess the old guy lost it, threatened to take my friend outside and fight him, and my friend was like 1.5 feet taller than him, young, strapping guy, right? I'm like, I wouldn't want to fight that guy. Get serious. And I think the days are coming, folks, after the rapture, when that will turn into absolute chaos. And those are the things that then will, I think, turn people off. Their hearts will grow cold. I think it'll be easy. Because as we go on in the chapter 24 of Matthew in verse 40 and 44, we see Jesus provide this caution and a greater explanation of what? The second coming? No. The rapture. There are 2 men in the field. One will be taken and the other one left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken, one will be left. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. But know this. And then he tells the story of the master and knew when the thief would come, right? That is the point of Jesus saying no one knows the day or the hour, but for the Father himself. And if you've heard me before, I would love for you guys to check out online this religious movie called Before the Wrath. Very good video. Tells the wonderful story of the Jewish custom, especially in Galilee, because these were all Galileans, right? Of the Jewish ceremony of marriage and what's involved, and how the father of the groom is involved. I mean, oh my gosh, it helps explain so many pieces that we, especially Americans or those that are non-Jewish or have no idea of Jewish customs, it makes so much sense, okay? So then he goes on and talks about the parable of the servants, the faithful servant and the evil servant. And again, this is really about his emphasizing the imminency, how quickly, the unknown this is going to be, and that you got to be prepared. You have to have your mind in the right place, right? And that's really what Jesus is going on about as he wraps up his thinking to the three questions, my version, the three questions provided by the disciples. So I share this with you because Matthew 24 is talked about a lot with regard to unfulfilled prophecies, and really because it's the words of Jesus. Not that the words of Paul that are given to him by the Lord or the words of John, which are given to him by the Lord, are better or worse. They're all the Lord's words, right? But here he is, firsthand, Matthew 24, saying, let me answer your question. And what a great, can you imagine? Here's Jesus. Imagine, I can't imagine his human state of mind, but he knows what's going to happen. He's ticked off at what's gone on in the temple. He knows he's being stabbed in the back by Judas. He knows that he's about ready to be arrested. He's about ready to be crucified. He's about ready to bear the weight of the world's sins, right? And the disciples are like, hey, how does this all go down? And he does a great job, right? Can you imagine? I'd be like, look, guys, you can't figure out what's going on right now. You want me to tell you what's going to go on in the future? He didn't do that. Undoubtedly, I would have done that, but he didn't do that. He simply provided them with a wonderful summary in a collected presentation of what is about a 2,000-year story, right? And I think that, as you watch different pastors that are in the know and well-schooled and learned, they're all getting very anxious. I mean, every pastor that Andy Woods, Amir Sarfati, you pick Jack Hibbs, you pick whoever you want, they're all very anxious about what's going on right now, right? Not just with the Iran war, but just all the activities and the news and every day, right? So there's a lot going on that really signals what Jesus said would happen, right? And a lot of people sort of make fun because I've got some apps on my phone that show me when earthquakes and when they are and how big they are, and yeah, do I look at it every day, because I want to watch the birth pains, right? So that's where we're at. That's how things are today. We love you all. Thank you for being with us for class 8. I will send out a handout that I didn't send out. I will start next week's class talking about Daniel 12 because I just want to cover that briefly, and then we'll jump into some of what we call the pre-rapture, pre-tribulation excuse me, items that some of them we know already because of what our reading is, but we're going to keep going down our list of things yet to come. All right, well, that's it for today. We will see you all next week. I guess it'll be the 17th of June. We love you. Have a great week.